Hello, hi. Welcome to the February wrap-up. Yes, my hair looks interesting. My sister just trimmed it and then I washed it. So, it did this. We just let it do whatever it wants after I wash it, okay? That's what we do in this household. I have my iPad. That's what I'm going to read what the books are from this. Just because my computer's acting up and it makes more sense, okay? I'm turning down the brightness. Oh my god. Much better. So I have this bad boy. I will start with the book stats and whatnot. It shouldn't take longer than a few minutes. I will put below in the timeline when I stop and actually start talking about the 17 books I read. So like, if you don't care about book stats, if you're not like me, you can just get that, go to the actual books. Another thing, there is, like, in January, I did read a whole entire series. This one, 5-book series in the month. And so when I'm talking about the actual books, when I get to them, I will, instead of talking about them one by one throughout the list, I will just talk about all 5 of them at once, when I got to the point of reading the first one. And I think that's it for the intro. So yeah, book stats. There's much nicer. I don't have to scroll down as much. Easy. So first, book stat. I already talked about how I read 17 books. But I only read 3,389 pages, which is about 500 pages less than January. And I did 40 hours of audiobook, which is about equal. So I read more books, but a lot of them were shorter. Right? My average rating was higher though, 3.93. Yay, there were no rereads, and 4 were authors of color. Good times. I read, and this is where I gotta talk about how I got ahead in the podcast by a bunch, because I read 7 eroticas. Whoops. I also read a historical, 2 horror, a poetry, and 6 romances. Good times. I read 3 audio, 11 ebook, 1 physical book, and 2 mixed media. One of those mixed media was audio physical, one of them was audio ebook. So just know that. I read 12 adult, 5 YA. 1 debut, 11 were authors I read before, and 5 were new to me. Technically, I have it labeled as no DNFs on this, but I did soft DNF. The Good House, I think is the name of it. I got to 11%. I only got a few chapters in. It's kind of long. Like, even at Rose time speed, it was gonna be over 6 hours to finish it, and I was not in the mood for a haunted house story at the moment in time. I was very much in my romance era, right? Especially dark romance. We don't need to talk about it. And so then, because of that, I soft DNF'd it, and I haven't picked it back up. I will at some point, I swear. Just know that technically I read, like, I think it was like 3 hours of the audiobook. The first chapter is so long that Hoopla had it set up as an hour for the first chapter, and then it cut off into a, like, chapter 1 continued for like another 45 minutes or something. It was obscene. Right? But other than that, I rated 2 books 5 stars, 4 books 4.5, 5 books 4 stars, 2 books were 3.5, and 3 books were 3 stars, and 1 was a 2.75. I remember exactly which book that was. Oh my goodness. But yes, there's that. And then also I did start another book that was on my TBR before the end of the month, and I didn't finish it in time. I only got like 96 pages in. That's fine, because one of the books, the 2.75, I did start it in January and didn't finish it until the end of February. It took me like 30 something days to read. It's obscene. We don't need to talk about it. So yeah. Okay, actual books. We're gonna start off with a mixed media. I did do audio and physical. I read most of it. I think I got to part 2 or something like that in just physical, but I read it for the weekend reading vlog. And the issue was that, did I even tell you what this is? It's The Marriage of Opposites by Alice Hoffman. I really enjoyed it, all the stuff. The issue is that it's a slow-paced book, and I had a time frame because reading vlogs, all this stuff. So I picked up the audiobook and read, I think, the last half-ish along. So it was like 8 hours of the audiobook. I have that written down. That being said, I did enjoy this. I rated it 4 stars, I believe. Yep. It was a good time. I think at this point I officially really enjoy Alice Hoffman's writing style. Even the one that I didn't like, which is the newer one that I read. I think I got it from NetGalley, and people are starting to read it now, and I thought it was fine. I remember talking a bunch about it. I think it's like The Invisible Hour or something like that. But like the dual, it was weird. But even then, I still liked the writing style. Faithful, one of my favorite books ever. I really like the writing style. I think it's like a 5-star, that one. So like, not surprised that I liked it. It was a good time. I liked how there were so many different POVs throughout the years. How it goes for like 60 years of the main character's life, right? And whatnot. And if you want to know more about my thoughts, there is a whole entire reading vlog. But basically, I really enjoyed it. Rated it 4 stars, right? Podcast. I read a lot for the podcast. We already talked about this. One of them was Fake Dates and Mooncakes, which I did just via audio, and I also rated it 4 stars. This one we both really liked. I am pretty good at picking gay romances. Hot take, most of the gay romances I chose were fake dating for the podcast. It was fun. It was pretty easy. Just gay, fake dating. We both like those. Bada bing, bada boom. Basically, one of the main characters, his aunt, his mother recently died. He lives with his aunt, who runs this restaurant, and the other main character and him run into each other with the situation, and he asks him to be his fake date to his family member's wedding. There's like a whole bunch of family drama going on in that area, and then they start to actually like each other. Things happen. There's a whole entire family cufflinks. It's cute, very dramatic at points. Really liked it. There's also a mooncakes baking competition in it, so if you're into that type of thing, it's good. It's just a good way queer romance with fake dating. Like, it's good. The end. Next up, the other physical book, a poetry book. I found it down here where I'm sitting. Is all the books from school throughout the years, and I saw this and I was like, hey, maybe if I read this. I think it's like a whole collection of 180 poems. I think I rated the whole collection like 3 stars. Because there were some that I didn't like, some that I liked. I highlighted random sections and all of them. I rated each one. The yellow tabs on top are the ones that I had to read for school. The orange tabs on the side are the ones that I rated 5 stars and really loved. That being said, there were other ones I also really loved. Like, there was a one that I rated 4.5. That was one about his mother's dementia and him having or caring for her because she's like his mother, and how it's emotionally draining, but like the one moment where she looks up when he's like helping her get dressed and she recognizes him and how impactful that is, and I'm fine. Yeah, you may be wondering why 180 poems. The whole point of it is making poetry more of a thing in classes, but like not like you look into every line, every word of every poem type of thing, but like you just hear one poem a day type thing. And just like talk about how it makes you feel. Maybe not even talk about it, just write down type of thing. And I think it's about 180 days in a school year type thing. That feels wrong, but I don't know. That's what it said in the intro. Anyways, I'm gonna tell you my favorites. I also wrote it down on Goodreads, so if you want to look at the list, it will be there. I may copy and paste it into the description just because I know some of them I will not be able to pronounce the author's names. First one is White Towels by Richard Jones. It's very short. Like, it's like 7 lines. But I found it funny, but also melancholy. And, you know, we love that. We have Before She Died by Karen Chase. I would like to know all of the ones I really liked are generally depressing. We have Happy Marriage by Taslima Nasrin. Yeah. yeah. I remember looking up the author of this one after I read that because I really liked it a lot. For Mohammed, Zeid, age 15 by Naomi, Shihab, Nye. I can never pronounce her name properly. This is, I think, like the 6th poem by her that I've ever read. I read a lot of them in my poetry classes in college. I am 98% sure in like the first half of this book there is another poem by her, and I rated that one 3 stars, and I was like, what is wrong with me? I generally really love her poems, and then I got to this page, which is page 168. It's 113th, so it's like a good chunk through the 180, and I was like, oh. Anyways, it's sad. As they all are, because I'm me. Skin by Lucia Perillo. Also, hear me out, sad. And then the last one I really liked was How Many Times by Marie Howe. Spelled with an E at the end, so. And those are the poems I liked most in this bad boy. Bada bing, blah, blah, blah. That's the way for the poetry books, or the physical books. What am I saying? Who knows? Next up, one of the horror books for the horror reading vlog that this Good House, or the Good House, was supposed to be in, is This Delicious Death by Kayla Cunningham. I did that one also by audio only. My thoughts and opinions are, it was fine. I kind of predicted a lot of it, like the kind of love interest for the main character kind of being the villain. Yeah, I guess that really early on, especially when she was kissing him, I was like, oh, 100% he's gonna be the villain. And all that stuff. Also, there's this whole thing where, like, before a chapter, it would go into the past before they became ghoul zombie type creatures. And I realize that makes no sense. I'll go into the plot in a second. But, like, I had trouble differentiating in my head between the past timeline and the current timeline, and also between the 4 girl main characters. Like, I'm pretty sure in the vlog I go on like a 10-minute tangent trying to figure out which one's which, and I'm pretty sure I had them right, but I'm not sure, which is an issue because 2 of them end up together. Yeah, anyways, this is a world where one day just a bunch of the population got really sick with this sickness that is, they say they got turned into ghouls, but it's more like zombies type thing. And in the process of turning feral in that moment, they killed and ate a lot of people. Scientists made synth flesh, which is a type of flesh, kind of like human flesh, but not human flesh, to feed the ghouls. That makes it so they don't go feral, and that they don't kill any people. And there's like this whole thing where if you're a feral ghoul, you can't be convicted of killing because you're a feral ghoul, right? But there's like a whole bunch of other stuff. There's like a whole scientific political conspiracy. They are at a music festival. These 4 girls were like the only ghouls in their whole school, and were kind of like socially outed because of it. And so they they became friends, and they go to this music festival in the desert in the middle of nowheres, and then suddenly there's like dead bodies, and one of them goes feral despite the fact that she's recently eaten, and so they kill a guy together, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And yeah, it was fine. 3 stars. I wish for more. Okay, now we get to the series that I read all of. I'm gonna talk about them all at the same time, and that is the Mindfuck series. Also, for the podcast, the first episode is out. It's gonna be until the end of April, right? That all these are coming out. But basically, the whole series is about Lana, who I think about a decade before was a victim of a horrendous crime, along with her brother and her father, and everyone assumed she died in the crime, but she actually took the identity of another dead girl, and with her help of her best friend, who was also the boyfriend of her brother, she works to get revenge on the people who harmed her by doing serial killer things, but also at the same time the FBI are trying to track her down, not knowing that she is the killer. Let's just say all the precaution stuff she does to make it look like she is male works. Right? And the head FBI profiler in charge of her case is Logan, and at the very beginning of the first book, they start dating. She doesn't officially know that he's in charge of her case. He doesn't know that she's the killer he's trying to hunt for, at least one of them. And also, she knows that's dangerous, but she just likes him, and also isn't like trying to date him to get information and whatnot. It's very much like a revenge porn type thing. Each book is under 200 pages. I read the whole thing. I read the first one, was obsessed. It still is sitting at a 4.5. All of them are a 4.5 except for the second to last one. The fourth one, All the Lies, is 5 stars currently, but there is a very high chance I will up the first one to 5 stars. I labeled the whole series as my favorite for the month. I am kind of 100% obsessed. I do 100% want the bind up of all of them. I have issues. It's so good. Is it depressing? Is it anger inducing? Is it like so painful to read sometimes? Yes. Especially when you get details about what happened to her in the fourth one. Yes. But did I also laugh when she filleted the main perpetrator? Also, yes. I was laughing so hard. And then she hung his body from the bell tower of the church. And I was laughing. Like, I should not have been laughing, but I was laughing. And it made me feel all the emotions. And it was so good. And the way it was written, it very much gave... I think it was published all around the same time. Like, all in the same year. Like, all in 2016. All the individual ones, right? So I very much think she like wrote them all in one sitting and split them up into books, if I had to guess. I don't know. But yeah, I read all 5 of those. They were great. I love them. We don't need to talk about it any more than that, because there are many podcast episodes about to come out about them. And after the first one, I think they're all going to be over 2 hours long. So, whoops, I'm sorry, they're great. The end. Right? Next up, also for the podcast, we have the fiancé farce. I just learned that I didn't know when I picked it up that the author of it is also the author of Written in the Stars. And I just learned yesterday that Written in the Stars is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. And it has a lot of similar beats, and the way she writes was very similar to Fiancé Farce that I really liked and rated 4 stars, I believe. Yeah. So that's moved up on my TBR personally. But yes, Fiancé Farce. It's good, 4 stars. I did it via audio. Highly recommend. There's 2 characters. Can you tell I never remember characters' names? One of them is the basically manager of her family business, which is a bookstore, indie bookstore, but there's like this whole thing where her stepmom, who technically legally owns the bookstore, though I'm very questionable on that, very questionable on the stepmother in general, is all like trying to sell it, and won't like let her hire anybody else, so she's like very focused on this, and her, I think, step cousin is getting married to a guy who, let's just say, revenge porn, when she was in high school. Right, and nobody, like both her step cousin and her stepsister know about this because they went to the same school, but her stepmom doesn't, and so she made up this girl she was dating to be like, yeah, that's why I'm like missing out on all this stuff for the celebrating, because she wants to avoid having to deal with family dinners and going to all these things and having to see him. And then it comes to the point of the wedding, and they're like, oh my god, is that your girlfriend? Because the name she gave her fake girlfriend was based off of a model for a bunch of romance books she really likes. And the model happens to be an heiress who is the cousin of the guy who just married her step cousin. Does this make sense? And so she's all like, maybe I can use this to my advantage. The woman who she said she was faked it, or she said she was dating, right? So they get fake engaged because to inherit her grandfather's company, which is like journalism something, if she doesn't take it, her cousin will take it, who is the guy who revenge porn, right? I would like to note he was 18 and she was like 15 or 16. So he will get it if she doesn't, and she doesn't want him to have it because she very strongly believes he doesn't know what he's doing, all this blah blah blah. And so in order to keep it according to the will, she has to get married by a certain date. And so by the main character saying that they've been dating for a period of time, it sets up this thing that they have been dating for a few months, and so they can just like have a quick engagement and end up together. And a bunch of weird shit happens on top of that, including family drama. So much family drama. It's wild. Anyways, it's cute. Within like 2 weeks of them fake dating, they realize, oh, maybe we should like actually date. I'm actually into you. When they learn all the stuff that they're supposed to learn about the other one and all this stuff, and then things happen, and in the end, they do get married, and it's happily ever after. Okay, and it's just really well written. I recommend. Not fake dating, but also gay, is Hold Me by Courtney Milan, which I think I did ebook. Yep. I rated it 3.5 stars. Maria, I remember her name. I don't remember his name, but I remember her name's Maria. She has great shoes. She is someone who's worked very hard to get where she is in life. She is supposed to go out with her brother who's back in town, who, other than her grandma, who basically raised her after she came out as trans, is the only person who in her family who stood by her. So she's supposed to go out to dinner with him, but he's like, well, I'm new back in town, so like my college bestie also wants to, his name's Jay, I feel like, I'm gonna go with it. Jay is all like, he's like, I want to hang out with Jay as well, so they go to this group thing, but he's ending up late, so she goes to be like, hey Jay, I'm here, this guy's brother or sister, and I'm ready to go whenever he gets here. But he immediately just assumes that she's a pretty girl who knows nothing and she's an idiot and all this stuff, and pushes her away. It's very much internalized misogyny, and he doesn't recognize it until she points it out to him, especially on one very big occasion. He's like, ah, shit. This whole time, I thought I was one of the good guys because I was doing the bare minimum, but now I recognize I was doing the bare minimum, and that's not being a good guy. Oh no. And so puts the effort in to be better. But also at the same time, she runs anonymously a blog that he likes to read, and he anonymously DMs her, and they have like this whole DM conversation, but they don't know that they are the other person they're talking to until at one point when they do, and they like, we're gonna start dating like these DM people. And so she is very much, it's very much like a, oh my god, I love you as this person, but also know you in person, you have been absolutely horrible to me. And so like trying to figure out their whole relationship with both this knowledge, how they've been emotionally intimate as these other people, right? But like, because of the things that happened when they actually knew each other's identities, how that affects physical intimacy and all that fun stuff. Anyways, other things happen. It's generally cute. I really like the shoes in it. 3.5 stars. It's a good time. The other book that, other than Mindfuck, would have won the month is The Weight of Blood, also for the horror vlog, by Tiffany D. Jackson. Honestly, the moral of the story is I should just read Tiffany D. Jackson's. This one is basically described Carrie but racism. That's the very bare minimum. Where basically she's light enough to be passing all this stuff, except one day it rains at school, and so everyone figures out, oh shit, she's not white. And it's a lot of everyone who's white, internal racism, and sometimes it's not even internal, just straight up racism. She is horrendously bullied. People are like pulling out her hair, throwing pencils into her natural hair, all this stuff. Someone records it and uploads it onto the internet. So then the internet is like, excuse me? Right? And so they've had this whole thing where they haven't had an integrated prom like ever. It's always been like black prom and white prom, right? So for the first time ever, there's like this whole push to have integrated prom. The head white cheerleader, who very much the focus of the internalized racism characteristic, right? Her boyfriend happens to be the black football player who is like the only black guy anyone ever accepts, and he like just ignores all the microaggressions that happens around him and all this stuff. And she's all like, hey, you should take her out to prom because it'll look good and all this stuff. And so he eventually agrees to like at least befriend her. They start talking, and then there's like more bullying. The best friend of that cheerleader girl ends up getting expelled basically because another recording of her doing blackface, making fun of her, goes live, and then yeah, she happens. And then at this also she is being physically abused because racism by her father. There's also a lot of like religious stuff very similar to original Carrie, right? And comes to a head at prom where, you know, the typical Carrie stuff happens, and I have theories what happens. There's also like this whole thing where there's a podcast after the fact years later talking about everything that happened then, like it's a true crime thing, and how like it's supposed to be like Maddie did it and blah blah blah. But like, did she actually do it? Is she actually supernatural? All this stuff. Is she actually dead? And all around just really well written and so good, and like I highly recommend. I guess that's why I'm ending that off on. It's good. I highly recommend. I rated it 5 stars. I did it via audiobook. It was really good. I think partially through I did pick up the ebook, so I dual read it, but most of it I did just audio. And it was really good. Okay. Next up, I went to from that to 2 books in the Mindfuck series, and then into Monster Smut. Remember that time I read Kraken Smut? Well, I decided to continue the series, including the first novella, Found by the Lake Monster, by Lillian Lark. It was fine. I know way too much about lake monster reproduction now. Like, I don't know what else to say. 3 stars? Basically, the main character, who is human, is just wandering through the woods, trying to find a lake monster with her co-workers, and she gets lost, and then this lake monster is supposed to be going out on a date with a witch, because he's, like, it's possibly his last heat, so, like, in case he wants to have children, he finds her, assumes that she's his date, they actually get along really well. She's into Monster Smut, so she's, like, into it, but then he learns that she's not actually the witch, and then, they eventually decide to go for it anyways, and it's just basically a weekend of them banging, and them deciding to be happily ever after. At the end, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry, soon I will talk about the second full-length book. But first I gotta talk about the 2.75, which is Kidnapped by the Pirates. If this book is under 300 pages, let me just check how long it took me to read it. 24 days. Obscene amount of time. One character is the gay son who doesn't know how to read. That happened 2 times. And gay historical romances I read at the end of the month. That's weird. That's suspicious. That's weird. Anyways, he has difficulty reading, and also he's secretly gay. His father is a lord of some kind. Right. Him and his sister, who is currently pregnant, are on a ship on the way to this island where his father is trying to make it into like a new America type thing, right? But it's not working out well, and then they're kidnapped by pirates. The pirates let her go to go back home, and he's like, I want $10 million for his son as revenge, because they are pirates, because his father wouldn't pay them when he asked them to do a job as privateers, and then said that they did something illegal, blah 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 blah. Now they're pirates, right? So it's supposed to be revenge, but also like he just be tapping that ass the whole time. I'm pretty sure my notes at one point said nothing says revenge like banging the only son of the man you hate most, right? Blah blah blah, emotions, blah 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 blah. One of them almost dies. Actually, both of them almost die. Blah blah blah. They end up together happily ever after. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good, and it took me way too long to read because it just kept on putting me in a reading slump. So 2.75. Blah, blah, blah. Monster Smut, Deceived by the Gargoyles, by Lillian Lark. 400 pages of so there's this one main character. She wants to start a family, and so she goes to a matchmaker. Happens to be Rose from the first book, right? She goes on this date with this gargoyle, and things are turning out good for them. They're like going out, they're having a good time. She's a witch, all this stuff. But then she also comes from like high like witchy royalty, right? But it turns out actually he has already 2 other mates who are also gargoyles, and it's all been secretly a ploy to get her to be their extra mate and them be a whole big couple, right? And all this stuff. Secrets come out. Yeah, she agrees they have cute time, but also at the same time she's being stalked by a guy she went on one date with, and basically he made a deal with her father that if he marries her, her father will pay off all his debts, especially since I think his cousin is the villain from the first one that has to do with human trafficking, right? So a bunch of stuff happens with that. and she almost loses her job. And then there's a second epilogue that sets up the third full-length book, and so now I want to read that immediately because that actually sounds really good. With her best friend, who is a human, who does get kidnapped by that guy. So now she knows about the magical world, and their boss, who is a magical creature of some kind, and his boyfriend, because he makes her do some research for bookish stuff, open up a magical book, right, at work, and then she gets cursed because of it. And so that's what the next one's about, and I'm excited for it. I want to read it immediately, but I'm gonna read the next novella first. I gotta wait for it to come in from Libby, but I'm gonna read it first. But yeah, it was good. I think I rated it 3.5. Like, it wasn't as good as the first book of the series, but I still really enjoyed it. It was a good time. I highly recommend. Next up, I read Ouran High School Host Club, Volume 12. I am so close to the end, and I'm scared. Okay, I'm scared, because in this one, Perillo goes to France, because, like, the senior, or Tamaki and Perillo's class have a trip to France. And I remember in the last one, Tamaki decided not to go on the French trip, because if he runs into his mother and talks to his mother, then she loses all the, income that comes from his grandmother, because he's, like, the only heir to his father, despite the fact that it was, like, interracial, not married relationship type thing, right? So his mother has been sickly for, like, most of her life, and so if he doesn't talk to his mother ever again and continues to be the heir, then she gets a bunch of money and gets to be taken care of, right? That's kind of the thing that's happening, and so he decides not to risk it and doesn't go to France and hides out from everyone. Also, there's, like, a thing where, like, he kisses Haru on the forehead, and now Haru is like, do I like him? So Perillo goes to France, and his whole entire time in France, he's just trying to find Tamaki's mother, eventually finds her, and talks to her about Tamaki, and finds a way to tell Tamaki and both her about the other one, and how she's doing better now, and right, and has a job now, and able to live on her own, all this stuff, and her about how Tamaki is head of the class and everyone loves him, but also, like, he's just a kind guy, and all this stuff. And so he, like, finds a way to tell both of them without blatantly telling them, so, like, no one figures it out. Why not? Tamaki's also trying to figure out what he wants to do in the future, if he wants to work for the family company, if so, what he wants to do, and all that stuff. And then also the twins also have a thing where they're, like, fighting over Haru, and then they realize there's, like, this whole thing where back and forth between finding out who should have Haru and all this stuff, and, like, using Haru in this whole thing, and they decide to, like, still be twins and super close, but they won't be as close as they were, like, sleeping in the same bed all the time, type thing. Like, one of them dyes their hair, so, like, you can't tell them apart, or you can tell them apart now, and so they're separate people and not the same person anymore. And then also, Honey and Mori's in the background of that whole part, and it's just more hints of Mori secretly being into Honey, and that timeline breaks me every time. Anyways, 4 stars, good. I'm so close to finishing. I have the next 2 already from Louis. I should read them ASAP. The issue is I don't want to finish it. There's 18, and I have 13 and 14. I'm so close. Oh my god. Anyways, the last book, Nobleman's Guide to Seducing Scoundrel, which I rated 4 stars, was the last book I read of the month. It's a duology. The first book I read near the end of last year, and it was, like, one of my favorite books ever, right? So I decided to pick up the sequel. I kept on pushing it off because I didn't want to read it and not like it as much, which, like, I was saying because I rated it 4 instead of 5, but that's because it took me a whole week because I was scared of reading it. But it is the Luke, who is a kid in the first one, is, like, 13 years later. He is an adult now, and he is searching for the secret money from the first one that was, like, had to do with a lot of the plot in that one. And there is a new Duke, I believe it is, in this castle, and, like, his family trying to fight against it because, like, they assumed he was dead because he fought in the war, all this stuff, and was taken captive, and the grandfather didn't tell anyone he was actually secretly alive, and there's a whole bunch of plot twists with that. There's a lot of family drama with that. So he's dealing with his family, and Luke, it becomes his secretary, and then they start a relationship, and a bunch of other stuff happens, and it's cute, and I like it, and I freaked out at certain points, and it was good. Like, should I read more KJ Charles? Probably, because I've read 3 now, and I liked all of them. Like, the first one, I liked fine enough where I was like, yeah, that was good. And didn't even know it's the same author when I read the first book in this series, in this duology. Like, why am I like this? Anyways, it was good. I really liked it. 4 stars. I highly recommend the duology, especially the first one. I contemplate rereading it every week. It's just that good. And that is that. I think that is everything. I can put these books back behind me. Also, the books in front of the bookshelf are digging to my back, so I'm gonna edit this off really fast. So yeah, there's 17 books. They were good most of the time. Other than that pirate one, they were all really good. The end. Next week video on Wednesday should be the weekend reading vlog. I already know I'm gonna read. Good times. Me finishing a series. We love that. Otherwise, normal vlogs on Wednesdays, all that fun stuff. And I think that is everything. Podcast up above in the cards. Kind of important because I read a lot of books for it. Like a scary amount. And then I think every vlog I mentioned will also be up above in the cards. I don't even mention the finishing series one. That's where I read the Monster Smut, and also the rest of the Mindfuck books was in that vlog. So in case you want that, that's also there. But yes, all that will be up above in the cards, as well as all the links below. And I think that's it. Stay tuned for the next vlog, and until next time.